She fell without warning. Kalira Vale's last conscious thought was not of fear or protest, but of silence. A split second ago, she had stood in the observation corridor of Nebulan Training Sector, eyes fixed on a drifting meteor fragment outside the transparent hull. The glass had shimmered with the ambient glow of Cairo's 7 twin suns. Then the floor beneath her vanished. There had been no siren, no countdown, no command, only gravity. Her body plummeted through a narrow launch shaft that cracked open beneath her boots. The velocity ripped the breath from her lungs. Her vision spun. Heat licked her skin through the seams of her cadet suit. Layers of ionized smoke coiled past her like ghost limbs. Somewhere below, too close, flashes of molten orange flickered through the dense fog. The inferno was real. A thermal draft slammed against her back, flipping her midair. She twisted instinctively, arms flailing, trying to orient. The armor's HUD blinked erratically. Asterisk signal lost asterisk across her visor. Her communication channel was dead. No telemetry, no uplink to the command dome. Her vitals were unmonitored. She was alone. Her cape, standard Nebulan issue. Carbon-threaded and fire-resistant, snapped like a wounded flag behind her. A sudden burst of wind tore it apart. One half whirled upward into the void, the other coiled around her wrist like a shroud refusing to let go. Then came the sound. It was not mechanical, not human. It didn't echo. It resonated asterisk like the pressure wave of a storm trapped in a cathedral. A guttural, primal growl, rising from the belly of the jungle like a question she did not want to answer. It wasn't a simulation. The Kaler was awake, and it was calling. Her body smashed through the upper canopy. Razor-thin branches snapped against her suit, some slicing through the armor like it was cloth. A single blow gashed her left leg. Pain flared. Blood met heat and turned metallic in her mouth. She tumbled through layers of foliage until the kinetic dampers kicked in, slowing her descent just enough to keep her alive. She crashed to the ground in a sprawl of dust, ash, and shattered ferns. Her visor cracked. Steam hissed from a ruptured joint in her gauntlet. For a moment she lay still, breathing shallow, absorbing the pain like data. Then she rose. Her boot crunched over something brittle, bone perhaps. Charred, not human. The air stung of sulfur, ozone, and something else, something biological. Like blood that had burned too long. Her internal compass reoriented. West, she needed higher ground, even a meter. She needed to see. She needed to understand where the hell she had landed. But before she could move, a blur flickered in the corner of her eye. A figure, tall, heavy armor, in human silhouette, not a rescue team. Another cadet. She wasn't alone. Her breath caught. More figures moved among the trees. 5, 6, maybe more, equipped, silent, methodical. Each one bore the insignia of Nebulan's elite division. Trial Unit Omega, asterisk. A name spoken only in whispers during training rotations. Their initiation was rumored to be different, bloodier. Unsanctioned, this was no exam, it was a purge. Her fingers gripped the shredded cape out of instinct. Wrapping it tighter around her forearm, it wasn't protection. It was reminder. She had asterisk not asterisk come here to be forgotten. One cadet raised his arm. A shimmer of energy blinked across his palm, phased blade. Activated, he'd seen her. He began to advance. Kalira ducked behind a ribbed tree trunk that pulsed faintly, organic. Bark with vascular patterns. Her neural implant tried to ping tactical overlays, but the grid was blank. There was no battlefield AI, no safety protocols, just instinct. Just war. The ground beneath her vibrated, subtle, rhythmic, almost like a pulse. The ferns nearby recoiled. A shift in air pressure swept the area. Her ears rang. Another growl, louder, closer. The Kaler wasn't far. And it was asterisk hunting them asterisk. It was asterisk watching asterisk. A jet of fire roared through the jungle ahead, lighting the mist in waves of orange and violet. Trees turned to ash in seconds. Screams followed, not human. The kind of scream that came from something realizing, too late, that it had been mistaken about what kind of test this truly was. Kalira didn't run. She couldn't. Every breath she took was now a calculation. Every movement measured. One wrong step, and either the cadets would find her and slit her throat for points, or the Kaler would decide she was not the right kind of prey. She crept through the underbrush, limping slightly, one eye on the sky that no longer offered escape. The canopy was ablaze in places, smoke churned in whirlpools. Somewhere above, a silhouette with wings the size of hovercraft glided soundlessly between the treetops. It didn't flap, it listened asterisk. Kalira crouched beside a pool of steaming water, probably acidic. She reached down and caught her reflection. Half her visor was gone. Her left eye stared back at her, streaked with blood, with sweat, and something rawer: clarity. This wasn't just about survival. This was an asterisk erasure, asterisk. A silent removal of those who didn't belong in the narrative of victory. And somehow, for some reason, she had been chosen to be erased. Not anymore, she stood. If she was to be hunted by cadets, by fire, by monsters, then she would give them something worth fearing. She looked at the torn cape. She looked at the skies. And for the first time since she fell, she smiled, not with confidence but with defiance. "Let's see what happens," she whispered, "when a ghost learns to fly." Behind her, the forest trembled. Kalira Vale was not meant to exist. On the official records of the Nebulan War Academy, she was a cadet of exemplary discipline, born on Earth Outpost L3, sponsored by a minor defense affiliate, and selected at age 13 for early conditioning. Her transcripts were flawless, her vitals consistent, her psychological assessments balanced. Everything about her was designed to pass unnoticed in a system that devoured anomalies. But none of it was true. Kalira was not fully human. She was the only living hybrid of a bloodline long erased, descendant of a humanoid species known as the Velari, wiped out a generation ago by the Serikthal Dominion. A quiet genocide buried beneath layers of military justification and censor-blurred archives. Her parents, once esteemed bioengineers, had tried to preserve Velari genetic patterns under the guise of adaptive research. When the truth surfaced through a data leak, they disappeared. Their names were erased. Their child, an infant then, vanished from every server that mattered. Only the Academy kept her alive, not out of mercy, but for study. A live variable in a petri dish of warfare. Kalira grew up behind mirrored glass, watched more closely than she was ever touched. Her earliest memories were not of warmth or lullabies, but of blinking diagnostic screens, pulse monitors, and clinical voices whispering through the walls. She was not comforted when she cried. She was analyzed. She learned to mute her sobs before she could speak. By the time she was 10, she could regulate her heart rate on command. By 12, she could alter her facial temperature to pass bioemotion scans. By 15, she had learned the most critical skill of all: to disappear within conformity asterisk. She became a model cadet, not because she believed in the Academy's mission, but because it was the only way to survive within it. Emotion in Nebulan culture was weakness. Emotional deviation meant instability, unpredictability, danger. Cadets were taught to crush fear, suppress empathy, and extinguish doubt. They were not molded to question orders, only to execute them. But Kalira, beneath the perfect salute and pristine armor, questioned everything. She never forgot that her existence was an error, a loophole, and that survival, no matter how refined, was not the same as freedom. In secret, she kept a mental journal, not of training metrics but of questions. Why do we define victory as erasure of the other? Why are we taught to fear what we don't yet understand? And if I become the best at surviving their way, will I ever remember who I was before it? She didn't have answers, but she refused to let the questions die. There was one moment, accidental, unplanned, that rewired everything. It happened in the lower quadrant of the Nebulan complex, in the restricted biology lab, sealed behind 4 layers of gene-locked doors. Cadets weren't allowed there, but Kalira's fingerprint passed. She didn't know why. Perhaps some residual clearance buried in her father's old code. Or perhaps someone somewhere had allowed her access. Inside, the room pulsed with low violet light. Stasis tubes lined the walls, some empty, others bubbling with compounds too complex to decode. But one chamber held something that didn't belong. A brain, not human, not Sericthal, not machine. It floated in biosuspension fluid. Neural filaments still twitching faintly, as if reacting to a distant signal. Kalira approached without thinking. Her fingers brushed the glass, and her mind, just for an instant, was no longer her own. Flashes struck her vision like lightning, images she could not comprehend. Shapes coiled in symbiosis, a nest of heat and sound. Rhythms older than language, pain searing, intimate, and then silence like the breath of a mountain exhaling into starlight. She staggered back, no alert triggered, no alarm sounded. The brain pulsed once, then stilled. Afterward, she told no one. But from that day, something inside her changed. She began to dream. Not of battle formations or academy simulations, but of flight. Not as a human in a jetpack or armor suit, but as something more instinctive. Something with wings that didn't flap, but swayed with thermals. That didn't speak, but hummed in thought threads. She remembered the name printed on the stasis tag, Kalar**. It was said the Kalar were apex predators of Kairos 7, semi-draconic creatures that could incinerate squads in seconds. Every cadet learned that, but no one mentioned their cognition. No one questioned why their neural structure bore resemblance to ancient Velari language patterns. Kalira did, and she began to suspect Kalar were not beasts. They remembered. That terrified her, and it fascinated her more than anything else she had known. So when her final trial was announced, when the Academy declared its ultimate test would be a solo drop into Kalar territory, she did not panic. She prepared, but not in the way the others did. They sharpened blades. She memorized wind patterns. They programmed trackers. She practiced movement mimics. They polished armor. She rewove her cape, deliberately, into something that could catch air like a wing. Because she didn't want to fight a Kalar. She wanted it to see her asterisk. Not as an enemy, not as a threat, but as something it might remember. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe it was madness. But for Kalira Vale, it was the only kind of victory that mattered. The day before the Ascension trial, Kalira knew something had shifted. She felt it in the silence between the corridors, the way her name lingered a beat too long on the instructor's lips. She saw it in the stares of other cadets, half curious, half calculated, as though they were all watching someone already marked for deletion. The whispers had started weeks earlier, that she was different, that her scores were too consistent, that her neural feedback scans showed non-standard pathways. One cadet, bold in his mockery, had called her the ghost with perfect form asterisk. But Rovek did more than whisper, he struck. Rovek was Sericthal-born, one of the rare full-blooded Warline cadets, accepted into the Academy after the human-Serac armistice. Towering proud, bred for aggression and dominance. His presence in the ranks was both political and symbolic, proof that even the old enemies could unify under one doctrine of conquest. But he never accepted Kalira, not because she was weak, far from it. She bested him twice in zero-grav combat drills, and once in mental resistance testing. That last one he never forgave, on the eve of the trial. Kalira entered her assigned module to find her neural interface missing, specifically the bioempathic adapter that regulated sensory stress. Without it, her system would be exposed during the drop. No override, no buffering, just raw pain. In its place, someone had left a stylized glyph, a spiral of 3 hooks. Unmistakably Serikthal. Hours later, her name was summoned to the tribunal hall. Not for commendation, for accusation. Unauthorized possession of neural mimicry patterns, the official charged. Attempted infiltration of restricted memory banks. The words were a smokescreen. The truth was simpler. Someone had planted the stolen adapter on her profile, rerouted logs to her ID, and triggered the auto-flag system. The evidence was digital, manufactured but believable. She stood before the tribunal, silent, refusing to justify what she hadn't done. She knew better than to defend herself with words in a room that had already decided she was in error. But what chilled her more than the sentence, temporary probation, was the smile Rovek wore as he passed behind her. "You don't belong in this narrative," he whispered. "But don't worry, the Kaler will clean up the glitch." She didn't respond, she didn't flinch, but her fingers curled imperceptibly behind her back. The Ascension trial was designed to be individual. Cadets were to be dropped one by one, separated by hundreds of square kilometers, monitored remotely as they each faced the Kaler alone. It was a test of survival, strategy, and instinct, brutal but fair. But that morning, as Kalira stood inside the launch chamber, the rules changed. No announcement, no briefing, just the hiss of pneumatic seals disengaging. She turned and saw not isolation, but 4 others in identical suits lining the chamber. Each one armed, armored, and silent. Rovek stood among them, his pale eyes locked onto hers, unreadable. Then the floor vanished. 5 cadets were launched at once, scattered like debris into the wild, into the fire. Into the Kaler's domain. A game of survival had become a purge. In the seconds before impact, Kalira's mind flicked through everything she'd prepared, and everything she hadn't. This was not standard protocol. Someone had altered the drop sequencing. Someone with power, Trial Unit Omega. She'd heard of it only in rumor, a quiet filtration program for cadets deemed problematic. Those who didn't fit the narrative, the ones who questioned orders. The ones who saw *** too much. She understood now, this wasn't about survival. It was about erasure. After landing, the chaos of the jungle swallowed her. The fire, the growls, the heat. But the words of Instructor Maron haunted her more than anything else. "If you want to live, Cadet Vale, don't look the Kaler in the eye. They kill what sees them too clearly." She laughed when he said it, softly, disbelieving. Now it echoed. What kind of creature feared recognition? What kind of intelligence destroyed only those who saw it as more than an animal? And the bigger question: why were they still being taught to kill something that might not be trying to kill them at all? The deeper Kalira moved into the heart of the jungle, the more questions festered in her mind. The jungle was not random. Its burn patterns showed restraint. Fallen trees formed near-perfect arcs around some impact zones, like firewalls, not wildfires. No bones, no torn limbs, only armor charred and empty. The Kaler was not a predator. It was selective. It was watching. Maybe even judging. Later that evening, huddled beneath the remnants of a collapsed observation tower, Kalira rewrapped the torn half of her cape, knotting it around her wrist like a tether. The other half had burned during entry. The fire had spared her, but not by chance. She'd seen it descend from the treetops once, huge, bone-winged, its silhouette slicing through mist and heat. She hadn't looked into its eyes, but it had passed within meters of her. It had turned its head, and then left, she didn't know why. But she knew one thing, it didn't see her as prey. And maybe, just maybe, it was because she didn't see it as a monster. The forest breathed like a living beast. Kalira moved through the low-tier jungle. Every footfall, a negotiation between survival and sound. Mist clung to her skin like static. The air was thick with vaporized minerals, damp heat, and that strange metallic scent she now recognized as the Kaler's signature, part ozone, part blood, part something older. She was alone. The cadets had scattered during descent, separation by design or by fear. Yet she knew she wasn't far from Rovek. He wasn't the type to let go. Around her the jungle warped. Vines hummed with a low, biological resonance. Trees no longer seemed entirely organic. Some had sinews, others pulsed with faint bioluminescence. Whatever the Kaler had done to this place, it wasn't random. It was curated, alive, and then she felt it, the tremor beneath her boots. Subtle, rhythmic, not footsteps, wingbeats. She turned too late. A blur of dark armor smashed into her side, sending her crashing into the base of a calcified tree. The impact stole her breath. Her visor flashed red, fracture in the shoulder guard. Rovek towered above her, faceblade ignited, eyes full of calculation. "You should have stayed hidden, ghost," he growled, leveling the blade at her chest. Kalira kicked upward, striking his thigh with her heel. It was enough to unbalance him. She rolled, staggered to her feet, breathing through clenched teeth. Her mind scanned every tactic she trained for, but none of them accounted for being hunted by your own. "You set me up," she said flatly. "Correction," Rovek replied. "I corrected a mistake. You shouldn't exist." They circled each other, blades low, hands twitching. His armor was newer, reinforced. Hers was cracked, running on half power. But she had something he didn't. She knew where they were. "Listen," she whispered, but he didn't. From behind them came the sound, low at first like a cavern exhaling, then rising into something ancient, something that carried memory in its vibration. The Kaler, its shadow passed above them, enormous, slow, deliberate. Rovek lunged, they clashed, blade met blade in a burst of sparks. Kalira ducked, twisted, deflected, her bones ached. Her lungs burned. She fought defensively, redirecting his strength, not matching it. Each strike pushed her deeper into the terrain, closer to where the heat grew denser, the light dimmer. And then she saw it, half buried beneath vines and stone. An opening, the mouth of a tunnel, wide, arched, pulsing faintly with red light from within. It breathed heat like a furnace. She dove for it. Rovek followed, relentless. They fell into the darkness together. The hangar beneath the jungle was unlike anything she'd seen. It was not built, it was grown. The walls curved inward like the ribs of some forgotten beast. The floor shimmered with liquid heat, not quite lava, not quite water, something between. Bioluminescent veins pulsed gently, lighting the chamber in dim crimson hues. And in the center, the Kaler. It stood still, motionless but not dormant. Its form was massive, nearly 5 stories tall, its skin an armored weave of bone and sinew, wings tucked tightly against its spine. Symbols pulsed along its ribs, patterns that weren't decorative but linguistic. Living language etched in motion, it turned its head. Eyes like eclipses, silent, watching, Kalira froze. Rovek, panting, raised his blade. "It's resting," she whispered. "Don't," he ignored her, took a step forward, and the Kaler stirred. Not in aggression, in recognition. It sniffed the air, slow, almost cautious. Its head tilted. One massive wing flexed slightly, revealing inner membranes lined with fractal filigree. Then it did something no training simulation had prepared her for. It lifted its forelimb and moved it in an asterisk slow, curved motion asterisk from chest to side, then up and out. Kalira's breath caught. That movement, it mirrored the one she'd made earlier. As she tried to stabilize her balance, using the torn fabric of her cape. The Kaler was mimicking her, or was it, remembering something? Her mind raced. Sympathetic mimicry, biological imprinting, in species behavioral mirroring. Not an attack, not a threat, a *** bonding attempt. Behind her, Rovik scoffed. It's testing you, stalling. They do that before they strike. But Kalira didn't believe that. She stepped forward slowly, carefully, and raised her arm, mirroring the same motion. Cape trailing, a soft wind circled the chamber. The Kaler blinked. A low rumble vibrated from its chest, neither a growl nor a purr. Something curious ***. Then it lowered its head, a gesture of *** acknowledgement ***. Kalira nearly collapsed. For the first time in her life she felt seen, not as a threat, not as a ghost, but as something recognized. Not prey, not soldier, kin. Behind her she felt it, the shift. Rovek drawing closer, preparing for the kill. I don't care what it thinks, he spat. I'm finishing this. She turned too late. Rovek's blade rose. The Kaler roared, not like before. This sound shattered stone, rippled heat through bone. The chamber convulsed. Steam burst from the floor. The Kaler lunged, not at Kalira, at Rovek. Fire poured from its jaws, raw, unfiltered plasma. In a single searing breath, Rovek was gone, not just burned. Erased, ash settled on the stone like snow. Kalira didn't move. The Kaler looked at her again, calm now, breathing steady. She lowered her arm, the cape fluttered slightly, her heart thundered. And in the stillness, she understood. It hadn't spared her because she was lucky. It had spared her because she had spoken ***, not in words, but in motion, in presence, in restraint. Where others saw a monster to conquer, she had offered reflection. And the Kaler had answered, not as a beast, but as something that remembered once being understood. The silence didn't last. Kalira stood still in the glowing chamber, the remains of Rovek reduced to ash behind her. The Kaler now calm, massive, looming, breathing slow like a mountain with lungs. For a fleeting second, the war outside, the trial, the accusations, all of it felt distant. Irrelevant. She had crossed a threshold not meant for cadets. Not meant for anyone, but the jungle above hadn't gone quiet. Voices came first, shouts in different dialects, footsteps crashing through undergrowth, armor scraping against stone. The rest of the cadets had arrived, survivors of the earlier drop. And they were descending into the Kaler's lair. She stepped back into shadow, instinctively shielding the lower half of her face with the torn edge of her cape. She didn't know what they had seen, but they saw her standing beside the Kaler, unburned, unharmed. And they drew their weapons. There, one cadet shouted. She's bonded with it, she's using it to kill us, another snarled. She's controlling the damn thing, look what happened to Rovek. Traitor! They raised their rifles, blades, pulse staffs. Kalira didn't reach for hers, she didn't even flinch. Her eyes flicked to the Kaler beside her, its body tense now, sensing aggression in the air. Its wings flared slightly, its tail curled, not ready to attack, but ready to defend. No, she said quietly, stepping forward, hands open. You're wrong, they didn't listen. She's a freak, hybrid scum, using alien tech to cheat the trial. A flash of energy struck the wall behind her, warning shot. Then the real shots began. The first cadet fired, another followed. One of them rushed forward, screaming. Their aim wasn't precise. They didn't care. This wasn't about honor or protocol anymore. This was *** fear, and fear demanded blood. The Kaler roared. Not in rage, but in *** pain ***. Kalira didn't scream. She didn't run. Instead, she **moved ***, just like before. One fluid arc of her arms, cape trailing like a wing. Another rotation. She stepped sideways, tilted her head, and let her throat vibrate, not a word but a tone. A hum, not mimicry, not command, an invitation. The Kaler turned its head toward her. And something ancient flickered in its eyes. It didn't wait for an order. It launched. The ground split beneath its weight. The air ignited with its fury. Fire surged like a living tide, washing over the cadets as if they were leaves in a storm. 3 were caught in the first breath, burned alive before they could even scream. The others scrambled, tripping over each other, diving for cover that didn't exist. Kalira stood untouched, caught in the eye of the storm. But her heart wasn't still. She hadn't asked for this. She had offered recognition, not vengeance. And now death bloomed around her like petals on fire. The 4th cadet fell, writhing, armor melting. The 5th, Allure. A boy who had once lent her a data chip during diagnostics raised his hands, his voice cracking. "Please, please, I didn't come to fight, I didn't." The Kaler paused. Its body coiled, its chest rumbled. Kalira stepped forward gently this time, slowly lifting one hand, not to command. Not to signal, but simply asterisk to be seen. The Kaler's massive head turned again. Its nostrils flared, and then it did something unexpected. It didn't attack. It hissed, not a roar, not a growl. A asterisk warning asterisk, directed not at Kalira, not at Allure, but at the world asterisk asterisk, a sound like a sealed tomb opening. A single syllable in a language older than any war. "Don't." Allure fell to his knees, sobbing. The Kaler turned its back. Kalira followed its gaze, to the opening above, where daylight filtered in through torn vines and scorched branches. Smoke curled upward. Ash danced on the thermal drafts like snowflakes. She didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The other cadets were gone, dead or fled. She stood there, surrounded by smoke and silence, with the Kaler beside her like a sentinel from another lifetime. She had not given it a command. It had not obeyed her. It had simply chosen asterisk, not to follow orders, not to destroy blindly, but to protect what it recognized as kin, or perhaps simply as not an enemy asterisk. She lowered her arm, her muscles ached, her skin burned where sweat met exposed flesh. But she didn't collapse, not yet. Allure looked up, trembling. "What are you?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know any more. The Kaler moved first, disappearing into the shadows of the lower tunnels, its wings folding like curtains of bone and breath. A soft hum echoed behind it, gone, but not lost. Kalira stood there for a long moment before she finally turned away. She didn't feel victorious. She didn't feel safe. But for the first time in her life, she felt something else. Heard, and perhaps, for a creature bred to disappear, that was the most dangerous thing of all. They brought her back in silence. The shuttle that carried Kalira away from the jungles of Kairos 7 hummed with low mechanical restraint. No one spoke, no one debriefed her. There were no cheers, no applause, no hand waiting at the threshold to say, "You made it." Only the hum of recycled air, and the quiet clicks of systems trying to pretend that this was just another retrieval mission. But it was. She was the only cadet to return when the shuttle docked at Nebulan Station. A full medical team stood waiting, though none of them dared touch her without gloves. Not because she was injured, but because she had come back different asterisk. The scans were inconclusive. No biological implants, no viral transference, no altered neural waves. But still, they looked at her like she had crossed some invisible boundary that none of them could follow. And perhaps she had. The following day, her image was everywhere. Cadet VEYL survives KAELYR encounter, asterisk, first direct and nonviolent contact. The one who stood beside THE. Beast, they called it a miracle, a tactical breakthrough. A shift in biological warfare. No one asked what it had cost. No one questioned what had actually happened. They only wanted to own its asterisk. The council summoned her under priority clearance. They greeted her with clipped nods and clipped smiles. Their voices were polite, their eyes were not. "You've done something extraordinary," said the lead official. A woman whose name Kalira didn't remember. The first documented peaceful interaction with a Kaler. No signs of aggression, no injuries. Remarkable. Kalira didn't reply. "We've reviewed the footage," another counselor added. "The creature responded to your movements. It showed restraint. Some would say protection. Still, she said nothing. What we need to understand now," the lead official continued, "is whether it was a one-time anomaly or something reproducible." Kalira finally looked up. "You mean, can I do it again?" "Yes, and if I say no," the pause was long but calculated. "Then we will study the variables, of course. Your biometrics, neural rhythms, posture patterns. Perhaps something can be synthesized." "Modeled in a lab," Kalira said flatly. "Yes, with a weapon in mind." No one corrected her. She leaned back in her chair, expression unreadable. "I'm not interested in helping you train others to fake what I didn't fake." Another pause, less polite. The counselor leaned forward. "Cadet Vale, with all due respect, this isn't about personal ethics. This is about progress. What you did, intentionally or not, could save hundreds of lives. Or end conflicts before they start." "No," she said, voice soft but firm. "It will start different ones. Ones built on assumptions you don't understand. You want to replicate something that wasn't a command." It was a moment, a connection. The words seemed to sour in their mouths. "Then help us understand that connection," the lead official said. "Document it, break it down. If you care so much about what it meant, teach us." "I can't," Kalira replied. "Won't," someone muttered. Kalira stood. "I'm requesting immediate withdrawal from the academy." The room reacted like she'd thrown a grenade into it. "You can't just walk away," the lead said. "You're an asset now." "A case study." "I'm not a case," she said, already heading for the door. "I'm just someone who wasn't seen as a threat, and maybe that's why I survived." That night, while the station lights dimmed and corridors emptied, Kalira returned to the one place no one else ever seemed to go. The Asterisk Archive of Biological Memory ***. It was a cold, humming chamber buried beneath Nebulin's medical wing. Most cadets didn't even know it existed. Rows of preserved neural tissues floated in slow rotation, Kaler brains. Suspended in cryogel, flickering with soft pulses like sleeping galaxies. One of them, Unit 17B, was the one she had touched years ago. The one that had filled her with impossible images, sounds without sound, a scream without a voice. She placed her hand gently against the glass. The interface recognized her. The memory played, not on a screen, not in language, but in feeling ***. A hatchling Kaler, nestled beneath the bone-arched wing of its mother. The soft clicking sounds of comfort, the slow heartbeat of safety. Then the vibration of danger, metal boots, voices in a foreign tongue. The mother rose to defend, a flash, and then nothing. The hatchling screamed, alone, confused, trembling beside the stillness that once gave it life. Kalira felt her own chest tighten, her breath slowed. Her fingertips curled against the glass. That moment, the confusion, the wound. The betrayal, it was the same resonance she had carried her whole life. Orphaned not by war but by silence, by absence, by systems too large and too cold to know what they had taken from her. The Kaler hadn't spared her because she was strong. It had spared her because it saw itself in her asterisk. She whispered, "I know," then she left, before boarding her shuttle off station. Kalira uploaded a single file to the internal communications archive. It wasn't a resignation letter. It wasn't even addressed to anyone in particular. It was a message, tagged for public access, unable to be deleted without elevated clearance. It read, "I didn't survive because I was brave. I wasn't chosen by the Kaler because I was different. I survived because something looked at me and didn't see prey. I wasn't a soldier, I wasn't a controller, I wasn't a command. I was a mirror, and for a moment something ancient saw its own wound reflected in mine. I didn't win by force. I lived because I was recognized as something that didn't belong to the war. If that's not victory, then perhaps it's something better." Then she signed off, not as a cadet, just as Calira Vale ***. This was never a story about military victory. There were no medals awarded. No monument etched with Calira Vale's name. No celebratory report filed in the archives of Nebulan Command. The official logs recorded only anomalies, an unprecedented response from a Kaler. The deaths of 4 cadets during a joint trial drop, and a cadet who, against every strategic prediction, emerged alive, not by force, not by kill count, but by something that couldn't be quantified. What happened inside the thermal basin that day was deemed an unrepeatable variable. But the Kaler never attacked humanity again, not because it was defeated, but because someone once chose not to strike ***. Someone chose to speak in silence, to mirror instead of control, to survive not by erasing difference, but by embracing it ***, even when that difference marked her as expendable. Calira left the Nebulan Academy with no fanfare. No one stopped her. No one honored her. They didn't need to. She had already stepped outside the system they were still trying to measure. In the days after the trial, she walked into the biometric archive, alone, unsupervised. The security systems didn't resist her entry. Either someone had left access open or the system, at some level, recognized her signature. She found the memory chamber. The Kaler brain she had once touched floated inside the same suspension fluid, its neural pulses slower now, more subdued. But the file she had seen before, the one that had haunted her dreams, remained. She opened it. This time she didn't flinch. It was not a weapon diagram, not a neural command map. It was a memory, simple, brutal, and unbearably real. A Kaler hatchling, no more than a third the size of the adult she'd met, nestled beside its mother. The surrounding terrain was Sericthal, recognizable by the sharp geometric vegetation and amber dust. Then came the gunfire. The hatchling shrieked, a sound not unlike the tone Calira had once mimicked in the jungle. The mother fought, but the blast that killed her was surgical. Cold, efficient, the hatchling lunged toward the corpse, only to be netted, drugged, and carted away. The image froze on its face, mouth open, eyes wide. The same eyes that had looked at Calira in the cave. Not in hunger, not in hate, but in recognition, she closed the file. That night before she left the station, Calira composed a single encrypted transmission and sent it to the Academy's internal database. No flag, no directive, just a message. I didn't win by strength. I survived because I was recognized as something other. Something no longer a threat. You keep training soldiers to be sharper blades. What you don't realize is that the things we fear most are simply remembering what we stole from them. She signed it, not with her cadet ID, but with her birth name, one no longer found in any registry. Then she walked out. She never looked back. Final reflection in the years that followed, reports from Cairo's 7 shifted. Kaler sightings continued, but none resulted in casualties. Scout drones reported that the creatures no longer targeted human outposts. They merely observed, appeared, and vanished. Some dismissed it as luck. Others called it behavioral evolution. No one mentioned Calira. And perhaps that was fitting, because her story had never been about glory or conquest or proving worth through destruction. It had been about choice the choice to resist fear, the choice to reach across silence, the choice to survive not by killing a monster, but by refusing to become one. Final advice: if you are human, remember this. Technology can program reflexes. It can forge weapons. It can even replicate memory. But it cannot program loss. It cannot replace what was taken from a creature who once loved and was left with nothing but flame. And the only way to bridge that loss is to enter its memory not as an enemy but as a reflection, as something it can choose, not to destroy. Closing thought. Sometimes survival isn't about outlasting the threat. Sometimes survival is about changing what the threat sees until it no longer calls you prey. And that quiet, uncelebrated, forgotten by archives, is the only kind of victory that means anything.